Today, I'd like to discuss a beautiful story that we hope to tell next year as part of the Acting Conservatory's upcoming season, a theatrical adaptation of John Steinbeck's great American novel, The Grapes of Wrath. This production was actually scheduled to be a part of the season prior to our current existence in this global pandemic. And boy, the relevance and timeliness of this story is as abundant today as it was when the novel was published in 1939. I'm optimistic and hopeful that the spring scheduling of this show will allow me to lead this production and create a meaningful theatrical opportunity for our OCSA community. There are many parallels between the circumstances of this story and that of 2020. As this current crisis strikes our country and those around the world, we're all going to witness many lives impacted due to the loss of jobs, family members falling ill, many perishing, and an economy that is already shaken. We are also already seeing aspects of this current crisis politicized, with the interest of the common man and those of big businesses and corporations creating a wide gap. It's interesting to see history seem to repeat itself. The story, The Grapes of Wrath, provides an excellent bridge to contemporary issues, including poverty, disparity, foreclosures, climate change, and how governments respond to human crisis that is created by both man and nature. The prolific theater artist Augusta Boal said, "Theater is the art of looking at ourselves." Well, this amazing novel and play provides each actor and each audience member an opportunity to find themselves in the world of the story. As an actor, this is the heart of our work, empathizing. There are many political, social, and philosophical stances one can take when approaching this material. However, our goal will be to empathize with the human situation. I'd like to take an opportunity to provide some context on the origins of this novel and play, and as to the time period in which it takes place. This story, which takes place in the 1930s, traces the migration of the Joad family from their Oklahoma Dust Bowl origins along Route 66 to California. The phrase "grapes of wrath" means an unjust and oppressive situation, action, or policy that may inflame desire for vengeance. We can see a number of obvious parallels in America's current state of affairs, groups feeling marginalized and oppressed. This particular story follows the tribulations of the migrant worker during the Great Depression. And though the play draws from the heaviness and despair of these folks, at its heart, The Grapes of Wrath is about the hope of humanity in the face of desolation. Let's take some time to provide historical context during this time period as we envision the Joad family on this long and treacherous journey in hopes of a better life. The Great Depression began with the stock market crash of 1929 and was made worse by the 1930s Dust Bowl. The Joad family was one of thousands of families that were driven from their farms during the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl was the name of the drought-stricken southern plains region of the United States, which suffered severe dust storms during a dry period in the 1930s. As high winds and choking dust swept the region from Texas to Nebraska, people and livestock were killed, and crops failed across the entire region. Okies, as Californians labeled them, were refugee farm families from the southern plains who migrated to California in the 1930s to escape the ruin of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Though the Joad family was from Oklahoma, Okies were not necessarily from Oklahoma. Some were from Kansas, Texas, Missouri, or Arkansas. Many Californians hated the Okies because they arrived impoverished. Wages were low, and many had to live in filth and squalor in tents and shantytowns along the irrigation ditches. As this hatred grew, one character in The Grapes of Wrath states, "Okie used to mean you're from Oklahoma. Now it means you're scum." John Steinbeck worked fervently to write a story that depicted the plight of the migrant worker with great accuracy, while composing a novel that spotlights the great economic and social inequities many farmers experienced during this time period. During the Great Depression, the farm class was disenfranchised and alienated, and economic power was placed in the hands of factory farmers and bankers. Due to the environmental impacts of the Dust Bowl and the economic impacts of mechanized farming and unaffordable bank loans, sharecroppers faced foreclosure and lost their land and entire livelihood. Hearing that it was the land of opportunity, many began to migrate to California in hopes of work and prosperity. Families piled all of their belongings and their entire families into cars and trucks, heading out on Route 66 in pursuit of a new life. The road to California was treacherous, many falling ill and dying along the way. All across the country, the Great Depression was impacting almost everyone and would last until the Second World War. Once in California, life was no better. If individuals were able to find work at all, they faced squalor, exploitation, prejudice, and violence. Families lived in shanty towns, often referred to as Hooverville, with barely anything to eat and families on top of one another. In 1934, there were 142 workers for every 100 jobs. Incoming migration was driving wages to below subsistence level for a back-breaking 10-hour workday in the fields. It was a time in which you had communists organizing farm fields and business interests protecting their own interest, far left and far right. Government leaders even deputized hundreds of men to use force and drive away migrant workers and prevent them from entering California. In the town of Salinas, there was a giant riot and shootout with both sides clashing. Steinbeck immersed himself in the culture of these migrant worker camps to get to know the Jodes. "I'm trying to write history while it's happening, and I don't want it to be wrong," said Steinbeck. He wanted to know how they talked, dressed, churches they went to, their dialect, cars, and family structure. His story was viscerally documentary, brutally realistic, and includes myths and references to the Bible. It's a mean, nasty book, and if I could make it nastier, I would. The book has a job to do. John Steinbeck even received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1962 for this amazing Pulitzer Prize-winning work. In the 1980s, Frank Galati and the up-and-coming Steppenwolf Theater Company of Chicago took on the monumental task of adapting the novel into a stage production. After several years of workshopping and reshaping, the production finally arrived on Broadway on March 22, 1990, where it ran for 188 performances and received the Tony Award for Best Play. The production was a massive collaboration of theater artists. Unable to create the same level of scenic realism as the famous film version, directed by John Ford and Henry Fonda, Frank Galati decided to move in a completely different direction. "I need a bare stage. I have to have a truck. I have to have fundamental elements of earth, air, fire, and water. That's all I need." Following the Steppenwolf's premiere, critic John Peter described the production with the following sentiments: "The power of brawny, visceral art, the importance of community, the existence of an indigenous American spirit that resides in inarticulate ordinary people, the spiritual resonance of American music, and the heroism of the righteous outlaw." And this is the road we too will follow. I want to create a production that is driven by the human spirit and inspired by the elements within the circumstances. Honest and authentic, epic and relevant, and above all, I want to create a communal experience. I believe this is particularly important during these unprecedented times. I encourage all actors, read the novel, watch the film, listen to the music of the time period, research and immerse yourself. But most important, empathize. Find yourselves within this diverse cast of characters that fought through the Great Depression. We too must come together as a cast, as a community, as an ensemble, and create a poignant piece of American theater.
I've been having some hard traveling, I thought you knowed. I've been having some hard traveling way down the road. I've been having some hard traveling, hard rambling, hard gambling. I've been having some hard traveling, Lord. I've been riding them fast rattlers, I thought you knowed. I've been riding them flat wheelers way down.